presents a new upcoming class. Stay tuned. Sacred Bonds by Daryl Abdullah Kirk. Yes, Sacred Bonds, navigating the depths of Muslim matrimony and the family. You don't want to miss this one. Please stay tuned. Streaming on all major platforms right here on Sunnahfollowers.net.
Ina alhamdulillah, wa salat, wa salam ala wa rasulallah. I'd like to welcome everybody to our series on the sacred bonds of marriage. The sacred bonds of marriage. And this is based on a book written by one of my students named Brother Daryl Abdullah Kirk. And tonight, what we're going to do is cover chapter 21 of the book, which speaks about intimacy. We covered how the rights of husband and wives in previous classes. We've covered last week how as a couple, as a husband and a wife, there should be good communication between both parties. We have also discussed how as husband and wife, remember guys, marriage is a partnership. Marriage is not a control thing of power, like some people try to make it out to be. You know, a man is the ruler of his home. The castle is his domain, as they say, but it's also the domain of the woman because he's the king and you are the queen. Every king has a queen, and every king and queen have princes and princesses. Okay, so marriage is a partnership. Allah said he created us to live together in peace and harmony and in mutual affection for one another. There may not be love between both the people. A lot of people marry, and they don't just marry for love, they marry for many reasons. But even if there's no love, the affection for each other should be there. You know, and the fact that we are brothers and sisters in faith. The fact that we are brothers and sisters in faith alone means that we should treat each other with dignity and treat each other with respect. So tonight we're going to cover the topic of intimacy. What does Islam say about intimacy between the husband and wife? Is it like it was before Islam? In the dark ages, women, you know, didn't have a voice. Women didn't have any rights to marriage or anything. A woman was married whether she wanted to be married or not. She was the property of whoever her father or brother or uncle was, to be bartered and sold and given away no matter how old she was. How many of you watched the show, The Last Kingdom? That's the story of King Alfred and his family. You know, look at that. I just watched an episode where as the little young girl, she was only 9 years old, was given in marriage against her wishes to a 60-year-old nobleman. All right, so you know, this is how it was back in those days. They just focus on Muslims the Arabs instead of the English and the Vikings and the rest of the people that were marrying women like that. Okay, so tonight we're going to cover the topic of intimacy, and let me put the PowerPoint up on the screen if I can. One of the book. And this is a picture as to how the book looks. For those of you who have not purchased it, this book is not written by Sheikh Kareem Abu Zaid, but it can be purchased on Amazon. It's only $13. And like I said, we'll be covering chapter 21 today, which speaks about intimacy between the husband and wife. And I want us to ponder these words of Allah. Allah says in the Quran, in the interpretation of the meaning and of his signs, is that he created for you from amongst yourselves mates so that you can find peace in each other. You know, marriage is a partnership. I don't own, he doesn't own you and you don't own him. Allah, we all belong to Allah, but we live together in respect. So this verse of the Quran highlights the wisdom of Allah behind marriage. It acknowledges the interplay of emotional, biological, and spiritual elements in building harmony and peace within the family. And in regards to intimacy, both the husbands and the wives should feel respected. It's the job of the husband to satisfy his wife, just as it is the job of his wife to satisfy him. And you know, we all know the hadith, whereas the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, any woman who refuses her husband's bed has the curse of Allah and all the creation upon her. Well, there's another hadith too, where the Prophet said, if your wife is in need, you should respond to her needs too. Because women have needs too. We have desires too. In fact, the men used to look at women as women as not having sexual needs. So a man who used to refuse to touch his wife, they would go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months without touching their wives. Well, Allah sent down verses in the Quran forbidding that. Allah commands you, brothers, that after 4 months of abstinence, you have to take her back. Either you go to her and take her, you know, the way she give her right, or you have to release her from marriage. So you cannot starve your wife of affection that way. You know, if you swear an oath of abstinence from her, it's 4 months, it's the max. Either you go back and give her what she needs emotionally and sexually, or your marriage will be null and void. Okay? And also the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the best of you men are those of you who are best to your wives. You know, a happy wife is a happy life. So again, Islam is not one-sided. Islam is a way of life based on balance. Not only do we women have to satisfy our husband's needs sexually and emotionally, but you men are to satisfy ours too. It's a give and take. And that all occurs from empathy. And I talked about this before. As Muslims, we don't sympathize, we empathize. What's the difference? To sympathize means to feel sorry for something, to feel sorry for someone. If you feel sorry for someone, oftentimes that sorriness, that pity, that sorriness turns into pity. And that pity will cause you to transgress the limits of Allah. You become emotional. Well, as Muslims, we don't sympathize, but we have empathy for each other. Empathy means that I put myself in your shoes and I imagine how I would feel if I were in your predicament, and how I'd want you to treat me if I were in your predicament. So there should be empathy within a marriage. And our Prophet Muhammad stressed this. For example, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you see the believers in regards to their being merciful among themselves and showing love among themselves and being kind. They resemble one body. So if any part of the body is not well, then the whole body feels it and shares in the sickness. Well, that's how marriage is. You know, if he's sick, I'm sick. You know, if he's not at his best, I'm not at my best. So we have to support each other. We have to have compassion for each other, and we have to empathize with one another. Because again, like I said, a lot of times love is not there, but that's okay. I don't need the love as long as I have the empathy, as long as I have the respect, the concern and care that I am entitled to. Does everybody understand that? Okay. And so, as a marriage, in marriage, we have to create a supportive environment. Whereas we can sit down, as we talked about last week, and communicate with each other. We should be able to speak about our likes and dislikes on a personal, intimate level. Remember, when we marry, we enter into each other. We become as one. So I should be able to share with you, as my husband, my likes and dislikes sexually. You should be able to come to me and share with me your likes and dislikes sexually. And we should try to work together to please each other. So communication is important. You know, you want to be able to communicate with your marital partner about what makes you feel the best way, what your likes are, what your dislikes are in regards to intimacy. And again, it's all about having respect for each other. You're not going to empathize with each other if there is no respect for one another. Listen to what Allah says in the interpretation of the meaning. Your wives are like a tilth for you. So approach them consensually as you please, and send forward something good for yourselves, and be mindful of Allah, and know that you will meet him and give good news to the believers. Here you can see in this verse lets it be known that intimate relations should be approached with the agreement and pleasure of both the husband and wife. It's not one-sided. A man doesn't rape his wife. You cannot approach me and force yourself on me like that. And I can't approach you and force myself on you like that. We have to be consensual. If I'm sick and I don't feel good, or, and I tell you I'm too sick, you have to respect that. If he tells you that he's sick, he's not feeling it right now, you have to respect that. Just like a farmer tends to his land with kindness, understanding what his land needs, and assuring to care for the land properly, a husband should approach his wife with tenderness, respect, and deep understanding too. And look at how Allah really gives women even more. Allah says, before you approach them, send something good for yourself. Allah is basically telling you, men, to send a gift. Give your wife something before you approach her. In other words, let her know that she's not being used for just her body and its comfort. Do a good deed first. Joke with her. Tell her how beautiful she is and how special she is. You just don't dive on her like the Vikings did, that plunge yourself in her and make her feel like she's worthless. Allah says here, send forth something good. Do something good first. Make her feel loved, wanted, desired, and needed. Don't just plunge upon her, because that's what men used to do to women before the Prophet Muhammad received the call to prophethood. Men treated women like they were nothing but pieces of meat. Okay? Also, our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave us insight into the nature of how a good harmonious marriage should be in regards to intimacy. The Prophet said, enjoining what is good is a form of charity, and forbidding what is evil is also a form of charity. Also, having sexual relations with your wife is a form of charity. Look at this. When he said this, the companion said, what do you mean? Are you saying that if we fulfill our the woman's sexual desires, that there's a reward in that? The Prophet said, yes. Do you not see that if he does it in a haram way, he will have sin? So if he does it in a lawful way, he will have reward for that. So here again, our prophet is telling the men, you know, if you're kind and gentle with your wife in regards to intimacy, if you please her in a respectable way, if you treat her in a loving way, you get blessings for that. But if you force yourself on her in an oppressive way, and you treat her like she's nothing but a piece of meat, this is haram. You're not going to get no reward for that. So here you can see our prophet Muhammad encouraged men to be kind, gentle, and affectionate with their wives, and not be barbaric with them like the men of their days were. But there is a warning too. When Allah says that your wife is a tilt, you can approach her however you want, that means everything is lawful in regards to intimacy, except for two things. Number one, you cannot have relations with your wife in her anus. And number two, you cannot have relations with her when she is on her menses. In fact, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever has intimacy with his wife through her anus is cursed by Allah. So you can approach your wife however you want to, you know, but you cannot approach her sexually on her menses, nor can you approach her in her anus. Other than that, anything else is lawful between husbands and wives. So thus we can see, guys, from this short chapter that intimacy is important in every marriage. But just like I tell you guys, Islam is not just a religion, it's a way of life. Just as the law tells us how to behave in all situations, you know, how to bathe, how to use the bathroom, how to sleep. He also tells us, you know, how to be with one another in regards to intimacy. So it's not about just you pleasing him. It's not about just him pleasing you. It's about both of you consensually to mutually pleasing each other, whereas and without transgressing the limits of Allah. All right, so I'm going to stop right here.